Welcome to an amazing chat this morning with Jess Rodrigues. Hey, Jess.
Oh, hi. Nice to be here this morning.
It is a great morning. I'm so excited to be able to chat with you today. You've been behind the scenes in your company. Somebody else who's actually on the call has been kind of more of the forefront. But what is the name of your company?
Sheldon and I both work at Tribe Inc. That's our company. So we came up with the name because we knew we really wanted to help people in the workplace. There's lots and lots and lots of stuff around helping with marketing and sales and product and loads of stuff for startups in that area. And so we wanted something that would reflect the people aspect of a company, and sort of embedded within the way we spell Tribe. We spell it with a Y instead of an I, are the words try and be, which is a more sort of human approach to work than just do and grind.
I love that. I love a good acronym and play on words. I resonate that. Also, when you said the why, it truly is because you do a recruitment aspect to your company. Do you?
Yeah, so we have a couple of layers to what Tribe helps startups with. Part of it is the talent acquisition portion, which is helping companies to position themselves to bring the right people in and go through that recruitment process in a way where they're actually finding really good alignment right off the hop. And then we also help with talent management. So how do things work with people inside your company, leadership, those kinds of aspects. And then the third piece is company culture. So every touch point that has to do with people in your company, we want to help with.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I come from an executive search background. So when I had first started chatting with yourself and Sheldon, and you had that recruitment piece, I'm like, oh, I'm so going to get you guys. Like, this is amazing because it's all about fit. Fit for the person, the family that was actually one part with executive search. When I placed a candidate, it was always not just about the candidate. It was about the influence that a new job is going to have on their personal life as well, and taking that into consideration. So when you said the why part of it, for me that was always about that that intent, that not just about the person, the fit, but also yielding to what is going to be a change for their personal life into their business life. So I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Fit is the word. That is like, if we could sum up our business in one word, it would be fit, especially on the recruitment side, because there's a two sides of that, right? There's the company who's looking for a fit for their role and the kind of person who's going to gel with their team. And there's the person who's going to be joining into that environment and how that fit really works for them, because they're a whole person and they have a whole life that includes working, but that's not their whole existence. And so, we talk a lot about, there's certain companies who want to rise and grind. And if
Yeah.
you're the kind of person who wants to do that, then that's a good fit. And that's what we want for
Yes.
you. We're not telling anybody, no, you shouldn't be like that. Everything should be work-life balance. There's lots of people who want to be on and just, bring all of that tenacity to their work. And there's other places where people want to have more balance and personal time and family time and those kinds of things. So finding the businesses and the personal lives that actually gel together creates such a better experience for everybody, the people who are trying to lead people and having certain expectations of them, and also the people who are coming into a company new.
And what a good touch point that you did say. Like, there are definite clients where they manage a person, and then there are clients that allow a true leadership approach within their culture and their organization. Have you found a certain client of, say, they want to manage a process in comparison to lead, how it is working with them?
I think lots and lots of founders in the startup realm, which is where we focus our efforts, have a major transition to make for themselves when they're starting to scale their business. So for most founders, they are just themselves as a solopreneur, or maybe a very small team, often with people that they already know or are friends with. And then expanding out of that dynamic becomes something completely new and different. And some people have sort of natural leadership skills that translate to that, and some people don't. And that's totally fine, because leadership is a skill. It's learnable. It's something that as you progress and as you go through your business, you have to adopt, because you can't always be the owner operator. At some point, you have to embrace being the owner leader and letting other people sort of doing the work and working on empowering them to get the things done, and sort of starting to let go of that control. But it's a major identity shift. Like I think most founders struggle because they're so used to doing the things themselves. They're used to doing it their own way. They know that they need to bring more people in. It's the only way the business will grow.
Yeah.
But when you've been in that implementation mode and you've been so hardcore with it, it's really hard to just say, okay, now I'm going to let somebody else take care of this, and I'm going to step back and work at a more strategic, more leadership level. So I would say, to a degree, all startup leaders struggle with that. It's a sliding scale, obviously, depending on whether they've had leadership experience in the past, whether they've chosen to develop themselves in that way yet. But it's there every time, to some degree or another. And that's that part of like saying, okay, business is marketing, sales, product, tactics, accounting. It is the tasks, but it's also the people. And that's the transition we're really trying to help them make, is to say, you've been doing this and you're doing it really well, and we want to help you to keep doing that, but you need people in order to move forward. And so there's a whole new thing that needs to come into the business. And there's so many layers to that. And that's why, initially Tribe was focused on company culture specifically, and we've expanded out because we've realized that there's deeper needs and maybe more urgent needs that our clients need on the front end of starting to bring people into their company. But company culture is really the focus of what we want to get to. It's company culture is how we figure out what fit looks like. Because if you don't have a company culture, you don't have a defined set of expectations or values or vision or these things in an articulated way, it makes it really hard to know whether somebody coming in is going to actually fit in your business or not. And so it takes some intention from the leaders to really say, okay, this is how I want my business to be. These are my values. This is how we're going to move forward together. And everybody is going to try to be on the same page. So,
it is a very complex, layered transition, definitely, for entrepreneurs. I know, like, the whole like buzzword, especially in school, is, oh, I'm a solopreneur. And I actually kind of hate that word, because we never all work alone. We might think that we do, but we can't get ahead to where we want to be alone. So that solopreneur thing is just kind of, I don't know, rubs me the wrong way. But you've had the business offline, and you're using school to kind of bring part of your business in line within school. How has that transition been for you? Because I mean, I look at the demographics on school and I kind of go, wow, it's like everywhere, and it's the younger generation that seems to be a lot more active on the platform. So how are you finding the transition into school? Is it just a piece for you?
Yeah, I mean, we actually sort of did it the other way, where we started on school thinking, there's a ton of entrepreneurs here. Everybody's trying to build their business here. They're going to eventually need the services of bringing people in, establishing their company culture, learning how to lead teams as they're growing these businesses. And because, school's sort of a baby platform, it's really got sort of early adopters on here. They're people who are willing to do things differently and not necessarily go traditional routes with things. So we thought, oh, there might be a market here.
Yeah.
And what we actually found out is, at least to this point, there are some people who have made tremendous headway financially on school and really have built their businesses there and are starting to get to that point of, yeah, we definitely need to grow the team if we want to grow the business. But the thing that we found the most useful about school is the community of school itself. So as we were refining our ideas around how do we serve this clientele of startup founders, the people within the various communities that we were joining really helped us clarify our offer and clarify our vision and make it so that we were having a sounding board. And so many people came along with no expectations, just to say, hey, it sounds like you're starting something really cool. I'm not sure about this part of it, or could I talk to you about this thing that you're doing, or maybe your copy isn't tight enough or whatever. And just loads of people come alongside on school to help. And I think that's so beautiful. Like for us, school more than anything else to date has been about networking and about interacting with other people who are also trying to move businesses forward and giving us so many ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, it is an incredible platform for that. I have never been on a social media platform where it's like there's no trolls, there's no bad behavior. It is everybody's positive, like you say, and very helpful, and there's no expectations for, hey, let me help you with something. It is really a place where people have such good intentions, and I do believe that's because the top leadership, Sam Evans, is definitely one where he's like, I really want to help a million people, a million entrepreneurs, and by doing that he is setting up this culture of when I'm not happy. I love that post he put up like months ago. It still like makes me giggle because when he sees something, he says something to get us all back in line and in for the right reason, and that is to help people in a positive way and be authentic about it. I love it.
Yeah, and to your point, he's created something where the first focus is community. That's literally the first tab, right? Like, so that's when you start with that kind of intention, it helps people to come along and say, yes, this is the kind of business I want to make, because it's focused on people being together and talking together and wrestling through things together and supporting each other. And that's the crux of it. And then, yes, there's the classroom and all the cool calls and all of the other things. But the focus of running business on school is to have community. So that's how we first came on, is thinking about, we resonate deeply with that kind of ideal of like, let's see people first as people, not clients, not whatever. They're just part of this group that we're forming around a central idea, whether that's learning how to use school or wellness or whatever. We're coming together on a shared priority.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of that is entrepreneurship at the moment. I mean, even looking at the school games winners, a lot of the early successes were all about how to make more money fast. And that all makes sense. And that's all good and part of business.
Yeah.
But we were like, there's a definite need here on the other side. Like, cool, you make all the money, and then what?
Yes.
Then how do you grow the business? Because you can't scale your business without scaling your team. And that becomes a huge learning curve and a huge roadblock at that sort of turning point of, okay, we just made a bunch of money. Now what?
And their churn and burn is brutal. Like the typical school games winners actually get about a 31 to 32% churn after they've won the game. That's just a given. That's just normal. But I noticed one particular group had almost 50% churn, and that's a burn.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel a little bit sad for them that it's so transparent to everybody what's happening within their business, because I would assume that's relatively typical for any business. Like, you run a promotion,
yeah,
and it brings a whole bunch of people in, and a lot of them are just going to be checking it out. They're like, oh, I'm going to get a really good deal on this, so I'll come and see what it's all about. But they're not necessarily an ICP. They're not necessarily somebody who's going to long-term be part of that community anyways. They're not necessarily going to be part of that brand, if you will, long-term. They're just like, okay, they're running a bunch of ads. They're very motivated. They're bringing all these people in. There is going to be churn for sure. 30% I actually feel like isn't too bad, but it's the fact that it's open books to all of the rest of us to see in their business.
Total open book. I mean, there's no hiding in social media, honest to gosh. And I am a researcher at heart, so I'm constantly clicking on the past tabs to see where they're at now, because especially within my own niche of coaching and helping people from personal to getting it into their business to a balanced life, I'm all about seeing where they're going to find their absolute, for sure, worries for themselves, their fears, are they going to get caught up in being a perfectionist? Are they going to get caught up then and overthinking and overanalyzing because they know what's expected, so they got to plan for it, for sure. So the series of the speaker series and the group that's within is built on the word why. So, why is about what we do worry about, and H is what we're holding on to, and Y is about what we're going to yield off and away from in order to allow into the next phase. So when you look at where you're at in your business within school, what do you think is the aspect, one or two aspects that kind of have you worried and just kind of in that bit in your mind where you kind of, oh, is this really going to work? How's this going to work? Do you have one particular piece that you kind of go, it's keeping me up at night?
I mean, with regards to school, I guess even a couple of months ago, we were saying, is school even the place for us? Because it's such a new platform, and because our clients tend to be very high ticket, like we can't even run most of our business on the school platform just from a financial perspective, because the transactions aren't high enough, I guess, would be the way of saying
the
that.
transactions are not a fit.
Right. So, being high ticket like that, this is not unique to us. We've encountered lots of people who run part of their community aspect online with school, and then part of it not on school, so that they can run the other functions that aren't supported on the platform for now. I think one of the things that keeps us up at night is that leaders start thinking about this with enough time to do something meaningful about it. So a lot of the entrepreneurs on school are moving so fast that by the time they're looking to hire, they're like, I needed somebody 2 months ago.
Yeah.
I just didn't have the funds for it, or whatever. I wasn't ready to think about that, or I was so focused on the games, or I was doing this, or I was in my comfort zone of producing this particular piece of the product that I really like doing, and I'm sort of ignoring this piece of scaling my business because of whatever reason. Feeling too busy, feeling not confident because they've never really done it before, not really knowing where to go for resources. So I worry that we're always going to be under a ton of pressure to help people, because they're not going to be able to be ahead of where they need to be in their planning, because they're so focused on this marketing, sales, product, business side of things that they're not necessarily looking forward into expansion. That's not part of their plans yet. And so we have definitely an onus on creating some education around that, so that people can be putting a little bit of strategy into their planning of like, okay, if I want to go for the school games, or I want to expand my business by X amount, I'm going to need people. Like, whether you want to work 16 hours a day or not, eventually 16 hours a day will also run out if your business keeps growing. And unfortunately, by the time they're getting to 16 hours a week or 16 hours a day, they've maxed out their capacity doing this side, and they have no time or brain space or energy to think about how they're going to become a leader and bring people in, and how to delegate. Like, you can hear it a little bit through some of the school games recordings when they go do the 1 day recordings. You hear little bits of it here and there about like, how do I delegate? How do I find the right people? They start to have these questions, but they're already so far into it that it's like, and how do I have the time to actually hire? Like, it was funny, Sheldon was telling me he was watching a podcast, and this guy's like a billionaire. He knows tons about business. And he said, most leaders should be spending a third of their time on hiring. A third of their time.
I love that. I love that.
And that makes sense. It should be a huge priority. But again, it's this shift, this huge mental shift that startup founders, especially if they're not going to be funded, and they're doing it as a bootstrap, and they're doing it, from it started with me and then maybe one other person, and working it up from there. They don't have that sort of perspective on hiring needs to be part of the plan.
Yes.
So
And it was
I think that's
interesting.
one of those things.
Yeah, you had also you touched on a couple of things in there, and one was they're putting in 16-hour days, and if they are going for the games, you're putting in more than 16 hours a day. And they're in that mental mind state of it has to be perfect and it has to go like this and I need to win the games. And then they get to after the games, they're like, I really could have used someone. So, what a cool concept, though, for you guys to be looking at, you know, let me just add something else to your plate. Um, Finding who wants to go for the games and helping them, you know, pre build their whole games aspect for themselves. So they're set up to win, whatever winning means to them, up front already. Spread out those 16 hours and really get creative for some potential clients for you.
Yeah, and or just have a plan for, okay,
Have a plan.
Well, have a plan. That's basically the end of the story. Just have a plan. And it doesn't have to go to plan, but at least if you're a little bit ahead, then you won't slam out of the games and into, oh my gosh, I have all this fulfillment. How the heck am I going to even service all these people I've brought in? We were so focused on selling, 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 selling. Now it's like, what do we do with all these people that we've brought in?
Yeah.
You know, and these are just part and parcel of learning and doing entrepreneurship. It's not easy. Every phase you're like, okay, I feel like I've got it, and then the next phase is like, okay, I don't got it anymore.
I know. It's like, and I love that part of it. That's what just drives me. I love learning something new every day. I mean, I've got my list of what I'm going to be doing for the next couple of days, and one of them is video editing. I've got to nail that down, and I have no idea what I'm doing. And that's just like such a top priority for me, and I love the aspect of learning something new. What are you excited to learn about that's new?
Oh my goodness, so many things. We are refining some of our technology processes on the recruitment side. So,
Oh, like what?
because of AI, which is a wonderful tool, but also creates complications with things like cover letters. Like the fact that any hiring manager asks for a cover letter anymore is beyond me. How do you know that it was actually written by somebody? Like, that their intentions are really in there, that it's a sample of their writing. You have no idea, none, like 0%. It's become obsolete, in my opinion. And because we're working remotely, having two text documents, the CV or resume and the cover letter, tells you nothing. It tells you nothing about how this person will fit. It maybe gives you a little bit of insight into some of the experiences they've had and whether they might be a fit on the skill set side. But if you're vetting strictly off of those just text documents, you're missing such an opportunity to move people forward that you might disregard right off the hop. So what we're doing is they're called video interview funnels.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first stage. You upload your resume at the end of doing a video funnel.
At the end.
Yeah. So this has a lot of advantages.
Yes, I love that.
One of them is if they're not willing to do the video interview, they already don't want it enough.
Yep, gone.
Right?
Yep.
There's none of this like easy apply nonsense where you have to filter through 400 applications. Like,
oh my God, I love this, Jess.
That makes no sense. So that's number one. We're saving a lot of time. We're saving a lot of energy. We're already off the top vetting that these people really do value this job and want to do something to show that. So
I love that creative approach, though. Like spin and just reinvent the interview process. Have them show up first, because you're right. Anybody can have the best polished resume and a cover letter for sure. But exactly. The CVs, they even know what keywords to put in a CV. So when you're talking with them, are the words in their CV or their cover letter even the words that they're using?
Yeah, so that's all kind of gone by the wayside because they know how to game the system now. And not that everybody is trying to game it, but everybody wants to at least get to the interview. So they feel like they have to do the thing that gets them to at least talk to somebody, right? So like I hate this whole like, oh, I need to totally finesse every single word in my resume so that it gets through the filtering system and then maybe somebody will talk to me. Like this is another one of those places where we're trying to embed humanity back in.
I
Like,
love
give
that.
somebody an opportunity to represent themselves.
And you'll come across candidates that they're not putting those gems of what's going to make them just such a fit for your client because they don't think it's all that incredible that they've done that, think that, whatever. But you get in a conversation with someone and it's like, whoa, you on paper you wouldn't have been, but in real life, IRL, it's amazing the fit that you
Absolutely.
can have.
And that's who you're actually going to work with. And plus, you have the vice versa situation, right, where the resume reads amazingly and this person
It's
is
like wah,
not
wah,
going
wah.
is not going to be a good fit. And
No.
maybe they can sort of work their way through the interview process, but we want to see them right up the front.
No, I love
So
that.
that's one thing. The second thing is, like, a lot of jobs are remote now. You have to be comfortable being on camera. You have to be able to express yourself. You have to be able to, interact with people live action while sitting in your house. So why not at least see them in that environment, see how they can put themselves together? Like, it's actually really funny to see how people approach this video interview process. Some people are like how, Sheldon and I were in our office, we're doing the thing in the space. Some people are like, what's up? Like, already you're like, okay, this tells me a lot about this person. And like, they might have the most beautiful polished resume, but is that how they're going to approach having meetings during the workday?
Are they even going to be in their office when they're supposed to be working if they're remote? Like there's just this whole level of kind of like distrust. It's just maybe that's just me because I have a low trust level with people. But that's the first thing I'd think of. It's like they're not really even going to be online.
And like, this doesn't give us a perfect indication. There's still ways of gaming the system. Like, I could be sitting here doing my video interview and still behave like that once I get the job. But like, the more we can narrow down, the more we can actually get down to like, why do you really want this position? Why do you want to work at this company? I have a very specific way of asking questions for these video interviews where I'll position two things equally and see which they pick. Because sometimes our clients want something really, really particular. So an example of that might be, there's a question about like, tell me about your ideal work day from the perspective of spending a lot of time collaborating with your team or spending a lot of time working independently to move the work forward.
Yeah.
There's no right answer to that. I just want to know how you work.
Yeah.
I know what my client wants. Maybe they want somebody who's highly collaborative and is going to show up to lots of meetings. Maybe they want somebody who's going to be super independent and just take things and run with it. But they don't know based on the way I've asked the question. And so I'm also able in the recruitment process to, again, keep coming and narrowing down to that fit.
Yeah.
Right? Because even if their personality is great and they have great experience, but they always want to be working in a team. Like, I love people and I want to be around people all the time, but my client wants somebody who can be self-managing. I want to find that up the front and I want to, move people through the pool appropriately. So doing the video interview, it's a lot harder for people to hide as well. Like, you could send them a set of questions, like pre-screening questions or whatever. But the way that they articulate themselves, the way that they talk about their own stories and who they are and what they like and how they work tells me so much about how I can move this person forward. Or maybe I think, oh, this is not right for this role, but I'm going to encourage them to go over here and apply for this role. Or just say, sorry, at this time, this is just not a good fit. Thank you so much for taking the time, though. And it's not long. This is the other thing about video interviews.
I was actually going to ask you, like, how long do you spend with them typically? Like, so like, let's say like it's someone that is just like, ooh. How long would you give that person? Would you know, like, in about 20 minutes or?
I should have been more clear. This is asynchronous. So I create the video interview funnel and every candidate comes through and they just answer the questions. I'm there as a video. They play me as a video. They answer as a video. And then I can review it after the fact. So I'm not sitting with all of these people. This is what I meant by like refining the way we're using technology, is so that I'm still there. I'm still a person. I'm not some AI bot that's popping up and, trying to help them make this very important decision about applying for a job. But it gives an interaction level where they're still having to do the work. They're still having to show up, but I don't have to be there every time. I can just go and review their questions. But
do you ever show up though? Do you ever do interviews?
Not at that stage. because that's like the very first interaction we're having with them.
So
right?
the second one would be live.
The second one is live.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, we can vet down to 1 or 2 candidates from the video interview funnel.
Yeah, absolutely.
So by that point, yes, you can very easily do some live interviews.
Wow.
So yeah, it takes a little bit to set up. It's not the same as like, oh, just click and upload your stuff and I throw it into my software and it picks out the keywords and it spits out the top 10 and I read those ones and then I pick, and it's probably about the same level of involvement, but the results are way better.
So much more fine-tuned. Yeah. So in the classroom, there were a couple of questions that Keith actually had. So I love putting Keith on the spot. So Keith, I want you come on in. You had a couple of good questions, or even from this, and even Sheldon. Pop in let's have a nice round table here. See, Lily all of a sudden is like, yeah, I want in on this.
Questions.
Yeah, question time. Keith, what were some of your questions and stuff?
So early on in the conversation, I was wondering if you helped them create SOPs, because it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about could come down to templates and SOPs. Once you work with enough companies, you could have like standardizations for different company types, especially if they're all similarly online and especially through school. Is that something you guys have already put in place or thought about?
Yes. So there is some standardization that can be there. The interesting thing is, having done the research, so I did 2 years of research around company culture and company development before we even got into working with companies in the way that we're trying to. And there's so many layers to how decisions can be made around how your company works internally, that we always start with vision and values. Because without understanding where you're going and what you really want to accomplish and how you're going to be while you're accomplishing that, we cannot make procedures for you. So for like, take something like feedback, giving feedback to people and how you're going to run that varies extremely depending on what you value out of your workforce. There are some people where they're like, I just want to do a quarterly review. And there's some people where it's like, no, because I really want a high performing team, I'm going to put in the effort. We're going to have the one-on-ones. We're going to do team building activities. We're going to do layers. We're going to have mechanisms for, top down communication and bottom up communication. There's going to be this huge idea flow, but that really depends on how people want to run the company, depending on how the leadership actually wants things to function and can actually commit to, not in an idealized way, but in a functional way, to say, yes, we are going to do things this way, and everybody's held to that standard. Until we can establish that, it's actually really hard to say, this is the standard way of doing things, just have at it. You could do that for things like accounting and things that are really straightforward. But we try to customize as much as possible because that gives the leaders and the fit the greatest opportunity for success.
Mm-hmm. So I see how that could, yeah, that does make sense. So I see how that could create some conflict with trying to prepare employees to be hired because of the variance. So, because the next question I was going to ask is like the growth curve, as far as when the company is growing on school, if they're trying to win the games and they reach a certain point where they have a certain amount of people that are buying things, have a certain amount of work that ramps up, and it's like you're working with them or they've talked to you about it ahead of time and you're watching the curve grow and you're like, okay, you need to hire somebody, you need to ask for help here. But it sounds like it's much more nuanced and complicated than being able to have like a standardization where you can look at what's going on and be able to predict.
Yeah, there's a real tension when you're creating a talent strategy between resources, meaning I can afford to hire somebody even though I need to hire somebody, and especially with like the way that some of the games works and all of the like discounts and all of those kinds of things, because they're planning for sales and they're not necessarily planning for company growth. There becomes this tension of like, yeah, we're making a lot of money as far as like our school games tally is going up. And we're just using school games as an example. This happens outside of school as well, but the revenue is not such that we're actually netting enough to bring people in. We're spending it on ads, we're spending it on this, we're spending it on that. And so it's actually really hard for them to bring anybody in pre the games or during the games, because the outgoings are so much just to make the numbers click up on the board. This is something that we've noticed. And then to Elaine's point earlier, there's a high level of churn. And so they're unsure if they're going to maintain that money on the books to be able to say, okay, I can commit to hiring somebody. So like there's this big jumble of, yes, to grow, you need more people, but you also have to be able to pay them. So there's quite a few people that are offering like commission only structures.
I was actually going to ask you about that, because it is such a youthful platform that some of them maybe not have had a corporate job or a corporate career. And so they don't know how to negotiate for their worth. They don't know what a role truly will be. Within the first hire, it's a dinner plate, and by the end of the year, they're in a platter size of responsibilities. They've never had to go through that. So they don't know how to be compensated for that, for a 1 year total cash compensation. That's what I used to actually base my fees off of the first year. So there is a lot of, oh yeah, I'll just, PayPal ya some money, or like you said, there'll be a commission, but only if they stay for after the first month and they don't churn. So it's such a different type of business aspect for them to navigate on both sides, the client side and the candidate side and your side.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic that the school games presents to the platform because of this competition layer and getting to that number on the board versus I'm building a business. This is where I'm going with my business. I have a vision for what I'm actually trying to create versus I'm just trying to win this thing and get the clout and get the prize and whatever.
Yeah,
that's where you start to see things fall down, is like, and then all of a sudden it's the next month, and then where's the fulfillment and where's the passion and where's the energy that keeps you going to keep building a business. I won't mention any names. I think it's fairly public knowledge, but somebody was sharing in a group recently, and he said, I won the school games. He was, I would assume, in the top 10. I don't think he was like the number one winner, but he won. And he's like, the next month I had no idea what to do. I had no idea what to do.
Yeah.
I sold and I sold and I sold and I figured out how to sell. And then it was the next month. And I didn't know how to fulfill, and I didn't know how to ask for help, and I didn't really know what I wanted out of my business anyways. I had just found something that people would pay money for. But he ended up folding it.
Yeah.
He doesn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
He does something completely different. It's not completely different, but he ended up having to completely reevaluate the way that he's doing business, because just going for a 1 month sprint does not make a business. A business is a sustainable entity that has inputs and outputs and a trajectory. And some people are still really learning that lesson of like what business really is.
Yes.
Versus like, I think I'll just start a community, or I'll just charge for this one thing that I'm good at or whatever. And they're not necessarily building a business per se. And then all of a sudden they have the kind of revenue that they could be a business and they could move forward, but they're not ready for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes a project for them. It's just where it's a definite different mindset for sure. That's for sure. Sheldon, you've been sitting here listening to all of us chat away. What do you think is going to be an area within the next year that is going to be something you really want to focus on within school first? Like within school, what do you really want to focus on the next year?
I think Jess covered that as well, but thanks for bringing me into this conversation. I think the point that she made was education. I think a lot of people, because the way school is structured right now, and I think a lot of it is going to be changing in the new year because there's going to be new rules for the school games. But the way the school games is structured was for a month, which makes it a project. It's not a business.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's why, and then there are a lot of young entrepreneurs coming onto school who have never been in a business, have never run a business, and are trying to figure out how to run a business. But their goal is win the school games 1 month. And that is what's skewing how businesses are being set up, right? Like as Jess has been talking about, you're setting up your business with this false premise that if I win the school games, I have a business. Yeah. But that's not a business. That's just a project.
It's a project, yeah. Like I call them all like little itty bitty project managers, but they're not even a manager yet.
Exactly. So I think education around how to set up businesses sustainably for long-term growth, around a vision, around a just cause, around a purpose, around the impact that you want to create in the world, that's important. It's important to think about these things no matter where you are in your entrepreneurship journey. You need to be able to know what is the problem you're solving in the world. Why is that important to you? And why will you persevere to keep going down that track, right? Steve Jobs used to say, you need to love what you do. And some of us have not figured out what we love even, or what we even like. Forget about love. Love in business is a whole different concept, right? Yeah. So I think educating people about, let's figure out who you are, what are your strengths, what do you like to do, which is play for you. Like Naval Ravikant has this quote where he talks about, what is play for you that is hard for someone else? And focusing on that, because you will love doing that, because you will persevere through, when it gets hard. You'll want to solve the problem in a different way. So I think the education part is very, very important for young entrepreneurs here.
So that's what you're going to focus on this next year, is educating young entrepreneurs, or?
I think there's a second piece that we'll be focusing on. So because we evolved past company culture out into leadership, talent management, and then talent acquisition and all the touch points of the people part of the business. The other thing we want to focus on is how we help interact with both of the parties. So the people who are trying to acquire the talent and the talent that is trying to be acquired. So we would love to be able to help create a space on school that has to do with people who are looking for jobs and want to work with school communities and want to not even necessarily have school-specific jobs, even though there are growth operator jobs and community manager jobs and those kinds of things, but people who do marketing, people who do copywriting, people who do all kinds of different things, video editing for VSLs and all of the bits and pieces that go into growing businesses. When people need that, we also have a talent pool that we can offer that's like, these are people who are familiar with the school platform. They want to work on school with people who are building their businesses on school. And so working, yes, with the entrepreneur side, but also working with the talent side of things.
So in 2025, Jess, how are you going to grow that community audience for yourself in your business? To have that pool, the pool of candidates, the talent, as you say, and then even the pool of opportunities. How are you guys going to do that?
That's a great question. We're still working through that. I mean, a lot of it is just getting clear on what we're trying to do. I mean, we spent, I think, our first 2 or 3 months on school just getting clear on even how we should be helping people. I was like, we need to help entrepreneurs figure out how they want the inside of their business to work so that when they bring people in, they're ready to go. And it turned out to be, upside down from that. They need people to come in and help lighten the load so that they actually have the space and they have the team to work with to understand how they're going to do that together.
Yeah.
So it's an evolution of how we're helping people in school as the platform itself evolves. So yeah, good question. I don't have a straight answer.
Well, and I love the fact that you don't have that straight answer, because that means that's like that creativity part of what you're going to be yielding and leaning into for the rest of the year for you. And life is about finding those different avenues and paths that, as you say, all of a sudden get flipped upside down and now they work.
Yeah, being responsive to what the community actually needs and not just saying, we think we're going to do this, so this is 2025 for us. I mean, a year is a long time, especially when you're in the beginnings of getting, your messaging and your offer and everything completely nailed down so that it becomes something that's replicatable as you keep going, and then you can start adding new and different and better things on top of it. But yeah, we're still very much in our own exploration growth phase of how to help the people on this burgeoning platform.
Yeah.
In our more advanced frameworks and stuff that we go through with entrepreneurs, we have a structure around leadership where we talk about individual contributors, so people who don't run projects or have people under them. And then you have project leaders who run tasks really well, they do planning really well, aren't necessarily good at leading people. You have people leaders,
okay,
who do have these innate characteristics that you're talking about, where, you know, they may know nothing. Like, I was reading an article about a person who was managing an engineering team, and they have zero engineering experience, because they were there to lead the people on the
people
team.
part
they
of
were
it.
not there to lead the project side of it, because they already have that expertise, but they didn't have anybody with enough EQ to actually like delegate and talk to people and go, oh, you're having a hard time with this, like, let's work on it, like all of those kinds of things. So those are actually distinct, and we think that they're the same. It's sort of like saying, you know, oh, because somebody's a really good car mechanic, they will be a really good foreman and lead other car mechanics.
Yeah.
No, not necessarily true at all, right? They
Yeah.
are distinct. And then we have a layer up from that, which is people who are in your C-suite or who are running departments, which have to have all kinds of layers. So they have to be proficient in their department. They have to be able to lead strategically. They also have to have business level strategy. They have to know how business works together, because leadership teams make decisions for the business.
Yeah.
And so you get a lot of this infighting of like, oh, but my department needs this and your department doesn't need that, because they're not seeing it as a whole. They're seeing it as my faction versus your faction.
And that C-suite does have that higher view capability of understanding. Yes, for sure.
They should.
Yeah, they should. Yeah, you're right. I've had a few C-class clients that are like, oh my God.
Yeah, and you wonder how they ever got there. But it's also like, you know, somebody like an entrepreneur, they've built their business up, but they don't necessarily have the skills. And so we want to help plug those holes by making them aware of things. Like, there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who should not be CEOs of their companies.
Oh, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah,
but that's a big mindset thing. Like, maybe you're a product person. Maybe you just love making your product. Don't be the CEO then.
Yeah.
Be somebody who is
great
up there.
Even like with like Apple, the two Steve Jobs and what was the other guy's name again?
Wozniak.
Yes. Like, they're just, again, like the two different parts of it. And there was a time when Steve was just like, as if I knew him, Steve, Mr. Jobs was totally not right for the company at that time. And the board's like,
Yeah, he had a lot to learn about being a leader of people,
not
just a leader of ideas or a leader of strategy.
But then they brought him right back in at that certain time where they knew him, and Steve Jobs was like, this is what we're going to focus on. And just, you know, my word, it was crazy.
Yeah, he learned a lot during that time. I've read a bit about that transition point in his life of losing Apple and then
losing it all. Like, wow.
And doing Pixar and a few other things, and then, you know, with a better perspective where he wasn't down in the nitty gritty and he was starting to see things better.
Yeah.
Coming back with that perspective. Not that he wasn't always an intense guy. He was, but you know, you don't put those kind of people in charge of other people. You put somebody in between who mitigates all of that, right? And that's part of what we're talking about, of structuring people. And structuring fit. You don't just throw somebody into a role because they're good at this other thing.
Yeah.
To like say, would I actually hire this person for this role? Or is it just because they're in my company that I'm thinking, oh, they need to be promoted? And why do we always feel like promotion has to come with people leadership? Why can't we promote people based on skills and let them continue to be individual performers?
Yeah.
Like, right? These are some of the questions we want to ask to evolve the way we understand doing business on the inside of a business.
Yeah. Keith, what is going to be one thing in 2025 that you're going to have fun with school? What's one thing, a growth thing that you're going to learn and just have fun with? What's one thing?
Fun with helping people grow. I think, because there's still a lot of new people coming here, and then people that are going to be trying to grow without necessarily trying to win the game. And I think that'll be great. There's been some people I've been talking to already, and they're excited about trying to grow on the platform. But it's similar to what Jess was talking about too, that a lot of people are very new to business, maybe not to social media, but to business side of it, and selling specifically. So I've been talking to people about how to make themselves marketable.
But how is that going to be fun for you? But how's that going to be fun for you? You skirted it.
It's fun.
You said how.
It's fun to see people win. Like, people get so excited about their business and what they're doing, and to see the wins. Like, you get to share that with them, because it's like they start out like, I'm having this difficulty with this, that, or the other. And you're like, okay, well, why don't you try this? Or have you thought about that? Or perhaps ask your potential clients this and see how that works. And they try it and it works. And they're like, oh, that worked. That was awesome. Do you have anything else that maybe I could try and work on? It's like, well, then try this and that and some other options. And I like being able to help people see a path where it's like, oh, this could actually work. This could work for me. And so far, that's kind of like where I'm at. It's been fun.
Yeah.
It's been enjoyable.
You said you had a question for Jess?
Yes. So have you thought of going back to the interview process? And you have a lot of videos that come through. Have you thought of using a scraping mechanism to be able to read through what they say and maybe pre-screen based on their responses to your questions to be like, yeah, I don't even need to watch this response because of some of the things that they said just totally don't work with the fit?
I think I see what you're saying, and I respect the efficiency that you're aiming for here. The way that I try to structure the funnels is that the questions that automatically would put somebody out of the running, I don't even make those video questions. They're sort of yes or no pieces that are right up the front, and if they don't answer them in a way that levels them into the actual video interview, they go to a video that says, thank you so much for your time. At this stage, you don't qualify. If you'd like to become part of the talent pool, here's the place where you can get notified about future jobs. So I guess I'm doing that in a way that doesn't require scraping. At this stage, the way that we've used the video funnels, it also hasn't been that we've had so many candidates that I would even need to do that. Like, literally, like, yeah, it's really funny to see these posts about like, how do you filter through 400 applicants? Stop making the process so that 400 people apply. Like, that, there's no way that 400 people are passionate about what your business does, have the skills, really want to be a part of your team, fit this role. There's no way. So like, let's just get a little smarter in how we approach this.
Yeah.
And get it to a place where, you know, and like as I'm screening, I don't always watch the whole thing. It becomes fairly apparent. So it's not taking a lot of my time to review them. If somebody is really good, I watch the whole thing. I make my notes. Those go into the live interview process. But for the most part, like I said, we're not at a place where I would even need to consider making it that efficient, and we can get it down to one or two interviewable candidates from there.
That is awesome.
It's working pretty good, yeah.
That is so awesome.
Cool. And then earlier, I think Sheldon was trying to say something earlier.
Yeah, I was actually just going to get back to Sheldon before I hit him with my one question. So Sheldon, go ahead.
I've lost my train of thought. I think.
Okay, good. I'll step in then. So, what is one thing, Sheldon, that you are going to, no matter what, have fun with in 2025 when it comes to growing your business together with Jess? What's the one non-negotiable has to be fun for you?
I think the connections with people is fun all the time for me. I mean, I'm a people person. If you know me, you can tell I love sitting down and talking with people and gelling with people, and I love building teams, right? So for me, the fun part, like I was interviewing a couple of candidates for one of our clients, was a school games winner, and I was like, wow, I love doing interviews. I was like in the interview. I'm like, I love this. I love this so much because I love connecting with people and really getting to know them. And then I asked them for feedback afterwards, and asked them, send me a loom with reflections of what you thought about the interview and you know, and your reflections of like, now that you've had the interview and you've had all the context, what do you think about your fit with the role? And the feedback that I received from them was like, I have not done this kind of interview in a long time. It felt like I was in a podcast and I was connecting with you, and I was able to be authentic. I felt my psychological safety was high. I was able to be myself. And that's what I'm trying to bring into interviewing and talent acquisition is we're all humans first. So let's see the person first, and support them in whatever rumble they're going through. And then let's make things actionable. And by the way, those are our company values, is see the person first, support them in the rumble, and then let's make things actionable. And when you do that, when you approach people with that essence, you really get to see the true person. You're not just interviewing them for who they're trying to pose to be so that they get the job. They're actually showing up as themselves. And I'm personally doing these interviews right now because I want to train a whole bunch of people to do interviews that way. Because whenever I've done this in the workforce, when I've run big teams and run big departments and stuff like that, when you just sit down and have a conversation, get to know the person so much. Like what we're doing right here is just having a conversation about, what we're excited about and stuff. So what I'm truly excited is about connecting with more people on school as a community, as a platform. I've jumped on so many calls with people, and you get to know people from so many different lights. It's like, wow, this is amazing.
How many hours a day are you working, Sheldon?
Not a lot. I wouldn't say
no, come on now,
16
seriously.
hours a day. Like I work 12, 10, 8, different days are different. Some days I started one day at 4 a.m. for a 5 a.m. call with someone in Thailand.
Yep.
And then I ended my day at like 7 p.m. Like I have days like that as well. Everyone goes through that.
Yeah.
Sprint days. And then some weeks are sprint weeks where I'm like editing videos or shooting VSL and then going all day long and editing till 9 p.m. at night or whatever.
So Jess, is your day about as long as Sheldon's, or?
No, I think I'm, as Sheldon sort of mentioned, he's the people person of our duo. Not that I'm not a people person, I really do like people, but I'm more on the back end. So because I have a lot more structure to what I do, and I don't sit in nearly as many meetings and calls as he does, I can keep my work fairly contained. I'm definitely not doing 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
And just to add on that point, and I think, I'm hearing this a lot in school, right? Everyone's like touting and like talking about 16 hours a day. Is that really what we want long term?
Long term, no, of course not.
Exactly. And that's what I'm trying to, I think the next generation here has got the energies, got the tenacity, and the 16 hours a day thing is being pushed a lot. But realistically, that's not how work should be. I think we should work towards building a sustainable work-life balance. And some people can work 16 hours a day. There's going to be sprints when you do that in business. But that shouldn't be like the standard. That shouldn't be the baseline that we start with. The baseline should be a healthy, balanced workplace where you love what you're doing. You can be creative. You can be innovative. And yes, there will be sprints that we do, which might require 16 hours a day. Mm-hmm. But let's work towards a better balanced approach, because creativity and innovation does not happen in a stressed environment. It does not happen if you're not resting. It does not happen if you're not taking a break. In fact, if you like Netflix as a company, they talk about this a lot. They talk about, the reason we have so much of success in our company across the globe is because we give people space to breathe. We give people space to take time off. We give people space to, go away and just decompress. And
but it's also in the Netflix's marketing, because you'll hear people say in their downtime they binge watched, a total series. And they actually have that in Netflix. When I used to have it, I got rid of Netflix because it was a time waster for me. I am a workaholic. But they did actually have like binge next or top 10 in Canada or US or whatever. And then people were like, oh, I'm going to binge watch this series. So it kind of, yes, they do that for their employees, but then they also kind of help their customer base to get in there and watch video, like season, episode after one another, to downtime for some people, for sure.
Yeah, if I can also maybe add to this point, it's okay for leaders to work as hard as they want. I think where we need to make a distinction sometimes, especially when people are making this transition into scaling their business and bringing additional people in, is they can have that expectation for themselves, but it can't be an expectation for other people, or it has to be very clear that that is an expectation coming in.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
Like I said, if people want to work and grind and work 7 days a week and work those 16-hour days,
yeah,
sweet, as long as they want to, and that's energizing and that's exciting for them and they love doing it.
Yeah.
The problem comes when it's like, well, I work 16 hours a day and I'm super passionate about my business and I think this is going to change the world and everybody else who's working for me should do that, but I don't tell them that when I'm hiring them.
That's where you get the churn.
You get big time churn, you get big discontent, you get all kinds of messiness that happens.
Yeah.
And so, like, my question is always like, okay, if people are working 16 hours a day, when are they getting groceries? When are they when are you doing anything else outside of work? Like, I don't even think I could do a 16-hour day and function as a person. Like, I need to eat. I need to go to the bathroom. Are we counting that as like part of the work hours of these 16 hours? Like, I've always been a little bit like 16 hours, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, but I spotted you have a manicure there. When did that happen in these 16 hours? Or like, do you literally never sleep? Or like, I get a little bit confused with these numbers. And I think maybe there's also just like a bit of a badge of honor thing going on there. But like I said, if people want to do it, amazing, go for it. Like, if you want to get there twice as fast and you want to work twice as many hours, phenomenal.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Maybe somebody else wants to do it in twice the amount of time you're doing and have more of a sustainable life. We're probably all going to get there. If you want to go fast, go fast.
Yeah.
Enjoy the ride. Not everybody is going to choose to do their business that way, and I think that's okay.
I had so I used to like work like super duper hard, long hours, long stretches, days on end, never giving myself a break. And then I would just get so exhausted mentally that I would take a day off, and then it was like a day turned into 2 days, turned into 3 days, because there was such then guilt of not going back to something that I had said I was going to do. And I ended up, for quite a while, I had this pattern of then I'd just kind of like give up. So I decided, especially in 2024, was like, I need to listen to my body when it starts to tell me, Elaine, you're pushing too much. You're getting tired. Your mind isn't as creative. You're making mistakes, and it's okay. And I literally have a note on the board in my kitchen right beside my coffee maker and in my bathroom, and it says, when you're tired, listen, take the break. You will be more creative when you return. Give yourself permission. And a lot of people don't. You're right, Jess.
Yeah, you can either balance it all the way along, or you have to do the big swings up and down.
And I'm a big swinger. Yeah. Ooh, that sounded so
people
bad. Woo! Whoa! Keith, I said it once again. Something that's like, oh, Elaine. Didn't mean it that way. Not judging if you do, but I'm just saying. It's like, good Lord.
Take that gif out of context.
Yeah, right? Oh, yeah. Well, this has been a phenomenal discussion. I thank you both all like three of you for showing up today. It has been such a great start to looking at how to really run a business. And like you say, you turned the process inside out and you're reinventing a fit and understanding the cultural aspects that people need from a talent perspective to a client perspective. And it's been so great being able to chat with you this morning. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me and having us and giving us an opportunity to chat about something that we love doing and do all the time.
I love it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Thank you so much, Keith. I think the whole speaker series idea that you have here, I think this is going to be huge in 2025. I think trying to bring the right people where through the conversations, there's so much of education happening, but there's also so many insights are being dropped that doesn't happen in like a webinar or a VSL. It's authentic, and I love how you've curated all of this today. The first series that you're doing here, I can tell that this is like I can already see the vision of your podcast going really big and actually impacting a lot of people's lives in school, because I think a lot of people are confused amongst one kind of narrative that's there. And I think these kind of conversations are going to open it up to bring new narratives out there so that people don't feel like, what if I don't fit that mold of the whatever we were talking about, like a 16-hour day or something else, or whatever is being portrayed. These kind of conversations help people feel like, oh, I'm not alone. Okay, this is great. I can be someone else other than what the popular norm is, right? And I think that's what you're breaking, and that's great.
Thank you, Sheldon. Yeah, I wanted a place for everybody to feel like a winner themselves, because we only hear basically from the school game winners. And I'm like, we win every day. When we show up, we're winning. So that's why I wanted these little insightful sessions every couple of weeks to help everybody across the platform. Like you say, you're not alone. You too, are going through this. There's something that resonates. We can learn from each other, and we can, I'm, as you know, big on collaboration. So if people start getting all these connections, oh, I had no idea, Jess and Sheldon do that. Whoa, Keith said something pretty interesting about copywriting or VSLs, and boof, like, it's just, why not do the share? That's just, I don't know, the cat's asked me.
And totally, and this is the true essence of the community aspect, right? I mean, having conversations with everyone. Yep. And I love the quote, I always quote this out, saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And I think this is what you're doing. You're bringing people together around shared ideas, shared visions, and then letting them figure it out, right? I think we don't have to follow one way. We have to follow whatever way is working for you. And I think the difference between us is what's going to make the difference. Right? We shouldn't ignore the difference. That's actually important. And in there, we could have productive ideological brainstorming and conflict instead of interpersonal conflict. And I think we need to move away from the fear of conflict to, we can actually brainstorm about and have productive ideological conflicts and good tete-a-tetes, almost like a discussion where new ideas are emerging. And I think that's the new phase of entrepreneurship. It's an emergence culture where ideas are coming together because people are letting go of their interpersonal, norms or opinions and coming together going, let's discuss, let's figure out, let's learn from each other. And I think that's what you guys are capturing here in this podcast, which is beautiful. It's so organic, it's so human. And that's what we need. We need more authentic human conversations.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Sheldon.
Yeah, that's really kind and sweet. And I'm probably going to clip that and use that, if I may. You're wonderful. And actually, upcoming speaker series, just to give everybody a little sneak peek as to what's coming up, we have a gentleman who is very much into the energy that's held within our genes, our actual genes of our body. And if a person is a leader or a planner, or if something is holding them back and it's within their DNA, their genes, and how to understand it. And it's called a shadow, and then also to move through it and past it in order to always have that shadow experience, that little rub that's within us, as a very, very valuable lesson. So that's going to be the next one. And then after that, I'm either going to have a Go High Level expert, or Goose is going to be joining us for a couple of episodes. So haven't quite figured out the nuances of those two and where they'll fit and mesh in, but lots coming up for everybody for sure. So thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone.